Toronto Blue Jays have made more moves and following what has been the most exciting series in a very long time, in years, for the Toronto Blue Jays. They continue to make moves. We're going to break down these exact moves, discuss what they mean going forward. But not only that, we have some big updates surrounding injuries, and returns and reinforcements are imminent. But we also have some comments following what was a fantastic game against the Yankees yesterday. Some comments from the players, coaches, and everything as we continue to live in what feels like a dream right now of Toronto Blue Jays baseball. But before we get into it all, you guys have been absolute beasts with the support lately. If you want to help continuing to support the channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Thank you guys once again for your continued support over here. We're on the road to 20,000 subscribers. You want to help us towards that goal, smash that subscribe button. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been an electrifying atmosphere at the Rogers Center and the Jays. We have a bunch of updates to go over, and stay tuned to the end of the video. Some interesting quotes came out, but let's start with not the quotes necessarily. We're not going to start there today. We're going to start with specifically one particular player. You can see his stats here, and that is Mason Fluharty. He has been officially optioned to AAA, and you can see this here, and this happened before yesterday's game, but the reason I'm talking about it now is because this actually has a pretty big domino effect once again on more moves to come, and also what this team is looking like, as well as how it pertains to specifically upcoming trades that are going to be happening. Probably a video later today on some trade reports, so stay tuned for that. But let's start with this here. Jimmy Garcia reinstated from the 15-day IL. We saw him in yesterday's game, but Mason Fluharty was optioned down. And this is pretty interesting because his ERA inflated up to a 5.56, a negative .4 WAR. Mason Fluharty, for the majority of this season, especially the first half, was not only a crucial part of the Blue Jays team and their bullpen, but he was the unsung hero. A top 15 Jays prospect. Keegan Matheson said he was going to be, a very interesting player to look out for in spring training. He was dominant for a very long time. He went 12 or 13 innings straight of maybe 14 innings straight of scoreless ball. And as a result, he was really penciled in as an everyday reliever, I guess, if that's a thing, not an everyday reliever, but a guy you can, pencil in every day, in the bullpen, of course, on your team rather. And of course, he pitches every, 2-3 days, whatever it ended up being. But as a lefty, you kind of got to be able to get righties out as well. And ultimately, he just struggled to get anybody out. And he quickly fell down the rankings. And then once, of course, Jimmy Garcia came back, Fluharty went. But this is kind of showing now, not necessarily the fact that Mason Fluharty is gone, because he, of course, was the obvious, guy to take out. They have some decisions to make going forward here surrounding once players start to return. Of course, Jimmy Garcia didn't look like quite himself yesterday. Ultimately, he got out of the inning. Probably not going to pitch today, probably be unavailable because he pitched like 34 pitches yesterday. But it goes to show a bunch of things here because you look at the Jays' current injury status. And of course, Paxton Schultz is on the 10-day IL with injuries. But they're going to have more moves coming back here soon. Now, Bichette is not on the IL. You can see his expected return is day-to-day. Plan to go through a full pregame warm-up and is feeling better, so there's hope he'll be available off the bench. This is, of course, for yesterday's game. They didn't need him off of the bench. I'm going to hope and pray that he plays in tonight's game because it's kind of crazy that throughout all of this insane 3-game stretch so far with the Yankees, and really the past 30, 40 games for this team have been unbelievable. No, Bichette hasn't been in these past 3 games, which is very intriguing. And obviously, you can see here, he'll be back soon. But they're going to have to make some moves, not necessarily with the bullpen, but they will once they, of course, make some additions. And let me know down below, are you surprised Fluharty is gone, or do you think it makes some sense given the fact that he struggled lately? But looking at some of the other moves that are to come here, again, we know for Santander, his expected return is potentially late July. I'm thinking more of August based on what Ross Atkins said. And you can see here, in case you were curious, dive into some of the other updates. He shared on June 30th that Santander's initial injury, which I covered in a previous video, included a subluxation of his shoulder. Probably pronounced that wrong, but he was optimistic that he'd start hitting soon. Of course, subluxation of the shoulder is not a very pleasant thing, and he's hoping for a potentially late July, according to the team here. And again, I think initially he didn't have a subluxation, but again, he ultimately got that. But Dalton Varsho is the interesting one. His return, in theory, is mid-July. We are in the early stages of July, and he's going to return in the next couple of weeks. He's ramping up, should run the bases again in the coming days. We're probably going to get an update following the game today, I would assume, because, of course, today's the last game of the series. So either that or ahead of the game, of course, on for the next day or so tomorrow. So it's going to be interesting on that front for Friday. But regardless of that, we're in a very good spot with the injuries. And there's going to be a lot of, players coming back. And Dalton Varsho, Bichette, both of those guys are, of course, key. But not only that, you're looking at a point now where this team has done everything they've done without Dalton Varsho and without Anthony Santander. You bring both of those guys back after the, I guess, trade deadline or maybe even earlier, and it's going to be a very interesting interesting next few days, and it's ultimately led to the Jays now being atop the AL East. Last 10 games are 7-3. They have injuries and reinforcements rather coming on the way, and so it'll be interesting to see specifically who they end up sending down. Leo Jimenez is an obvious one. Davis Schneider, not as obvious anymore because he's been absolutely fantastic. And if any more bullpen additions get made at the deadline, it's going to be interesting to see who else they send down with how good Braden Fisher has been. But that marks the end of the era for Mason Fluharty for now, and I would assume for most of the season. Also, a few just up-to-date injury updates here as they change every day. Some return and timelines. I know a lot of you guys have been wondering about and asked me about timelines, so here are some timelines here. But folks, let's dive into now Davis Schneider. He spoke out on what it takes to, what has felt like within the clubhouse for these past few games. It takes a lot of character to stay in the moment and not panic when stuff's not going our way. We've come together and rely on each other, and that's just a really solid win. And let's take a minute now to not only admire this, of course, the standings, right? This is from Jared Carabas, a Red Sox guy. He says, respect the Toronto Blue Jays. Fans are, and MLB around the MLB is starting to be a little bit terrified of them. I covered that in my video yesterday. But most importantly, they're starting to appreciate how good this team is. And they are extremely good. And we think about yesterday's first inning, contributions from everybody. Hopefully Andres Jimenez is going to be, healthy following, ready for today's game. Of course, still up in the air there. We'll keep you up to date with that. But other than that, it has been a very interesting stretch of play. And we see some comments here. Also, one quick note as well. I just want to quickly, mention regarding the bullpen. Ryan Burr is nearing a return very soon, so it's going to be interesting to see who he replaces because this bullpen is extremely, extremely fatigued, and we saw that within the game, yesterday, and that's why Jimmy Garcia had to pitch 34 pitches. Their replacement was Justin Brule. I would assume Ryan Burr is going to come up for Justin Brule, but tons of moves are coming there. I just remembered that, so I wanted to keep you guys, up to date with that. But let's dive into some of the comments. You can see this here. I was literally just saying, I don't know if I've ever been so tired after a game emotionally, physically, obviously, but just more so mentally exhausted with the roller coaster, and that was Ernie Clement. It takes a lot of character to stay in the moment and not panic when stuff starts not going our way. It says a lot about this group. We've come together and rely on each other. That's just a really solid win. Of course, he was playing shortstop as a replacement for, Bo Bichette, who's been a beast this year offensively, and the fact they've been able to do this under the circumstances is incredible. And of course, having Jimmy Garcia back helps a lot. You can see this here. That's our goal as a team all the time. This is from Vladdy. Try to take the extra base, Guerrero said through interpreter Hector LeBron. Obviously talking about both him and George Springer tagging up and moving up, which ultimately both runs scored. We took the lead. They came back. We never felt the pressure. We stayed together. Came back again in the end. We came up with the win. And of course, John Schneider even gave some remarks here. There are times when you have to win in the margins, and I feel like today was a spot where we did that. Take advantage of things that you can take advantage of. That allows you to be a little bit more sustainable. It allows you to take the eke out of the win here and there. And the guys are locked in on it, which is really cool. I'm going to be honest. Shout out to John Schneider. He's been managing the bullpen the best he can. Some people are asking, they should have walked Aaron Judge, of course. Some people are asking why they kept in Jimmy Garcia for 34 pitches. The bullpen is exhausted. They have nobody left. And, Justin Brule, you're not going to bring him in ideally unless it's against a lefty. And you kind of have to do this here. So they need to figure out some bullpen reinforcements soon, whether that's through Ross, whether that's through Ryan Burr. And things, ladies and gentlemen, are getting really exciting. And the Jays are also really exciting, tied for first in the AL East. Let me know down below what your thoughts are. And feel free to pause and read some of these comments as well. David Schneider talking about how good the Yankees are. And John Schneider talking about July 2nd, whole lot of season left. But your Toronto Blue Jays, our Toronto Blue Jays, and the Toronto Blue Jays are first in the AL East. You guys are beasts. Thank you guys for watching. See you tomorrow. Cheers. Or actually, I'll probably see you later today. Check out another video then. Stay easy.